Hello, my name is Justine Abigail Yu, and I'm the founder of Living Hyphen, a community that explores what it means to live in between cultures through the experiences of what we've been calling hyphenated Canadians. That's really anyone who calls what we now know as Canada home, but who might also have roots elsewhere. We publish a magazine and host a podcast featuring the voices of artists and writers from all across Canada. We also deliver cultural programming to encourage courageous and tender storytelling within our racialized communities. Our stories are beautiful, heartbreaking, uplifting, contradictory, and constantly unfolding. At Living Hyphen, our aim is to reshape the mainstream and to turn up the volume on voices that all too often go unheard. So much of why I began building this space was born, of course, out of my own lived experiences. I am Filipina Canadian. I was born in Manila, Philippines, and I moved to Scarborough, Canada when I was just 4 years old. And like many diasporic babies, my life growing up often felt like a constant tug of war, an ongoing push and pull between these two different places, these two cultures, these two identities. In short, it's been a life of living in between, of living in the hyphen. And so Living Hyphen exists now to explore this tension in community, in celebration, and in reverence. The contradictory knots of our identity may never untangle themselves, and maybe they aren't meant to. But hopefully, together, we can come to intimately know all of its shapes, curves, and intersections. Thank you to Brickyard Spoken Word for your partnership and for amplifying our diverse voices. And thank you for tuning in and bearing witness to our stories. Maraming salamat. Today, I'm bringing you a spoken word piece that I first performed at the Art Gallery of Ontario as part of Cultura, a Filipino arts and culture festival celebration of innovative artistic expressions of the Filipino-Canadian identity. This piece is really a response to the AGO's exhibition on Faith and Fortune, Art from the Global Spanish Empire. This is called Pilipino with an Asterisk. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and that reason is colonization. Did you know that the Philippines is named after King Philip II of Spain? The Spanish explorer Ruy Lopez de Villalobos named the islands of Leyte and Samar Filipinas during his expedition in 1542. Those who are acquainted with my homeland might already know this tidbit of history. But tell me, did you know that most Filipinos actually struggle to pronounce the F sound? Did you know that none of the languages of our archipelago include this fricative sound? What sick joke that our colonizers would give us a name that we can't even pronounce. It's more fun in the Philippines, our tourism board loves to boast. But as most Filipinos would actually say it, it's more fun in the Philippines. No, we are not Filipino. We are Pilipino. Pop quiz. Which country in the world has been colonized for the longest? I know this, I think to myself. It must be India, the jewel in the crown that was the British Empire. Wrong. Google slaps me in the face. It's the Philippines. 333 years of colonization by the Spaniards, only to be sold to the US for $20 million in 1898. Our allies, the Americans, did us dirty working with the Spaniards to orchestrate the mock battle in Manila, a whole fake-ass battle to keep our revolutionaries distracted and occupied while these two Western powers secretly transferred control of our capital. And so began another 48 years of colonial rule, this time under Uncle Sam. I shared this piece of trivia with a friend of mine while in the process of writing this piece. And she called me out and challenged me, asking, Justine, is it really only 333 years? Is it really only 48 years? When does colonization really end? Because look at us now. The impacts of colonization continue to seep deeply, not only into our institutions and into our systems, into the very name we call ourselves, but deep in the recesses of our mind, lodged deep into our psyche. I listened to Althea Balmes on my audio guide for an exhibit at the Art Gallery of Ontario, showcasing art across the global Spanish Empire. And she reminds me that what we now know as the Philippines is an archipelago of over 7,600 islands with over 110 ethno-linguistic groups, many of which are indigenous. She reminds all of us, that there were empires and civilizations that came long before the Spanish that influenced and shaped our land and our people. Althea challenged me to think of my own identity beyond what these oppressive systems tell me I am. She spoke to me through my headphones, saying, "To think about Filipinos is not to see us as a homogenized group of people, but a multiracial group. There is an inherent erasure of ancestral connections when we only strongly identify with a nation state. My mother is from Aklan. My father is from Cebu. My ancestral lineage lies in the islands of the Visayas. We are Aklanon. We are Cebuano. But I can't tell you what that means. No, my history is so fragmented. I don't know my heritage beyond my nation state. Can't imagine who I am beyond who my oppressors tell me I am. I am Filipino. I am Pilipino. I am a name our people can't even pronounce." After World War I, Freud wrote an essay called Mourning and Melancholia. In it, he described mourning as this grief of losing someone or something we know and that we love. Melancholia involves a kind of grieving too, except we can't identify what it is that we've lost. And so we mourn forever, always in search of what it is that we've lost. Fast forward 80 or so years later, David Eng and Shin-Hee Han coined the concept of racial melancholia, an ongoing and never-ending mourning as it relates to our identity. They wrote in the context of the diaspora, of the displacement and dislocation that immigration thrusts upon us, our migration leading to the loss of our culture, of our language, of our heritage. But it turns out you don't even need to move to foreign lands to lose a part of yourself. To be so far removed, you don't even know what it is that you've lost. No, colonization will do that for you, right on your ancestral home. And yet the spirit of my ancestors, whose exact history and language I may not know, I may never know, their spirit runs through my veins. Their fierce powers of resistance live on in me today, bringing me right here, right now, to question it all, to challenge it all, to take control of our narrative and write our living history for our future descendants. Colonization, imperialism, occupation, corrupt, exploitative, and dictatorial governments, historical revisionism, and the impending threat of history repeating itself. In the face of so many oppressive forces that seek to keep our people down, we rise each and every time. We subvert the system. We defy the odds. We resist domination. We stand. Or as we would say on our ancestral land, mabuhay.